miserable people doing things they hate just to fit in. I know it's easier to get along peacefully, but have you ever thought about you? Don't know why I keep on doing what I'm told to do when the rules are made up by someone we never knew. Baby, wipe your tears and hear me out. We don't need someone to feel alright. Let's do the streets on a Monday. Let's call your exes and tell them they can join us too. Why always put it on Monday when you can get rich for trying to see the outside?
Welcome, everybody. I'm so excited to have everyone here for another great show. We are going to discuss marriage on the brink, 5 concerns to rethink. And it's going to be a fabulous show. First, I would love to welcome my show producer, the amazing Pamela Elaine Nichols. She is a woman who has navigated the complexities of divorce and marriage twice while raising 4 amazing children along the way. She commemorates her journey of resilience post-divorce as an executive producer of Muddy High Heels Entertainment, a nonprofit she established to inspire others facing the same journey. Welcome, Elaine.
Thank you. Thank you, Lenore. Happy to be here.
I'm so glad you are. And then I am so thrilled to have my guest, Natalie Nesbitt. She is a licensed professional counselor since opening her private practice in 2011. She has helped countless couples save their marriages and relationships and come back from the deepest of betrayals, and aid them in letting go of their marriage and facilitate and harmonious co-parenting arrangements. Natalie is the owner and operator of both Mainline Marriage Counseling and Mainline Counseling Specialist. She provides couples counseling services in Paoli, Pennsylvania, conveniently located on the main line. She also provides telehealth for those seeking professional services in the comfort of their home. Welcome, Natalie, to the Dear Attorney Lenore Show. I'm so thrilled to have you here. I have worked with many of your clients and helped them through divorce. And I have to say, wow, what a difference when they've spent some time with you. Mediation is a lot more fruitful for people that have used your services. So I'm just thrilled to have you here to see what people should think about before they actually cross that line.
Well, thank you for having me. You know how much I love you. I love conversations together on our lunches. So yeah, no, I think it is. There are certain couples that are such good candidates for mediation, and I'm so happy that they have you to turn to because you've helped so many people. So it's wonderful.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. It's a good partnership.
I help.
So, thanks. So I think we have lots of questions waiting out there. So Pamela, if you can tell us what the first one is.
Yes, I'm going to read the first question that was submitted about the Dear Attorney Lenore Show. And it goes as follows. She never does what I ask. Dear Attorney Lenore, I need your help because I'm having a tough time with my wife. She never listens to me or does anything I ask. When I say, let's go left, she says, I'd rather go right. After 21 years of marriage, it's really hard to keep going with someone who is so difficult. I think we might need to get a divorce. What should I do next? Sincerely, she's too much work.
Wow. Well, it
Wow. Yeah.
sounds like they haven't done their work. And sounds like they, trigger certain things in one another that they may not even realize. 21 years of marriage is a long time. It's a lot invested in one another, and I think with this couple, I would suggest counseling, even possibly discernment counseling. And I think that's something that, Natalie, you must see every day. Are people like this coming to you? And how would you handle this? What advice would you give these people?
Yeah, my first thoughts are I think it can be very challenging when we're trying to influence our partner and like this person saying, I say left, they go right. Like how if you're not open to hearing that left is good,
Mm.
what chance do we have at really a good dialogue, a good communication, right? How can I effectively influence you? And I think that when that happens over a long period of time, because good having effective influence and being open to influence is such an important part of a relationship for it to be able to function effectively. If that happens over long periods of time, that partner can feel really helpless, right? Like, I can't reach you, you're not accessible to me if I need something from you, or if I want to be able to influence you. So that's the first thing that comes to mind. You mentioned discernment counseling, and I think that's probably something that we'll talk about through this process, because a lot of times between marriage counseling and mediation or litigation or whatever, there is this discernment counseling process, which is really important to figure out if we can stay in this relationship. Can we be in this relationship? And yeah, discerning whether or not to stay or go. It's really hard to be in a relationship where we're not, and do marriage counseling, we're not committed and motivated to the process. But with that being said, going back to this idea that it's so much work, I mean, relationships are work every day. It's work, it's sacrifice, it's work. And we'd be kidding ourselves if we thought, it's not, whether it's 21 years or 1 year, it's work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You know what, Natalie, I was thinking about listening to your answer, and I couldn't help but hear voices in my head. And typically I do hear these voices in my head when we have these conversations that, he's probably saying, she stopped making me happy. And she's probably saying, he stopped making me happy. And I think that's part of the problem, the dependence that your partner's job is to make you happy. And the time that they stop making you happy, there is a problem. And I think that's when the work begins, or should begin. What do you think?
Well, I was thinking about that too. What am I bringing to the table, right? I'm so focused on what you're not bringing. Am I bringing something? What am I bringing, good or bad, right? What am I bringing to the relationship? And also, are you curious to know why she's always going right? Your curiosity, like, why is it when I say left, you always go right? Explain that to me. What is it about? What's the resistance? Tell me more about that. How can I get to know you at this stage in our life after 21 years? Because I'm sure 21 years has brought many challenges. And also I'm sure great things, but I want to get to know you after 21 years. I want to be curious and understand why this is happening to us and why this is happening to you, because it's super frustrating for me, and I'm able to voice this. I'm super frustrated by this, but I'm not maybe bridging the gap enough to be able to understand what you're experiencing. That's making you feel
yeah. Yeah. Good stuff. Good stuff. You have to be open and willing and wanting to be curious. I love that. Except for when I'm no longer curious about you.
That happens after about the first 2 years. When we meet someone, I mean, I remember I've been with my husband for 22 years. So I remember falling asleep on the phone, like, how many kids do you have? Right? And then after about 2 years, you're like, well, I asked you all the questions, so I guess I don't have to ask you anything else, right? You're good, right? I don't need to know anything. But the reality is we are constantly changing and experiencing and growing and adapting and assimilating. And if we don't take the time to learn and be curious and see our relationship and even each other as with a sense of wonder,
Yeah.
we kind of get lost in all of it.
Yeah, sounds good. Should we go to
Wonderful.
the next question scenario, Attorney Lenore?
I think so. I can't wait.
Yeah. Me too. All right. It's time for a new adventure. Dear Attorney Lenore, I've been married for 7 years, but now I feel like maybe there's a better relationship out there for me. I think other people might be happier than I am. Can you help me understand if getting a divorce is a good idea? I want to find out if the grass is really greener on the other side. Sincerely, Greener Pastures Quest.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow. No, divorce is not a good idea if you can avoid it. And, I don't think people realize, where you go, your baggage goes with you. And, you pick this person that you're with for a reason. You should understand that first before you look for somebody else, because I can't tell you how many times I've had clients that got divorced and then showed up with their new significant other that was exactly like the person that they're divorcing. So I tell this person, think about this for a little bit and maybe do some personal work and find out what you're looking for and why you're looking for it. What do you think, Natalie?
This is always a big red flag in couples counseling, because
Mhm.
I'm a believer in the grass is not greener on the other side, and we should and you know what, it could be, but we should water our own first. So if are we watering our own grass? Are we putting in the time and effort, like we were talking about before, the work, the sacrifice, doing our own individual work? And the reality is, blending a family or dating another woman or man or what, date your wife, date her, take her, just try that first. Because blending like I said, blending families or getting out there and getting on dating sites and all is going to take a lot of work too. And so that doesn't mean you won't find a person that maybe is better suited for you. I'm not saying that to be in a relationship where you're that unhappy, but to your Lenore, what you're saying about divorce statistics, and I'm sure you know them way better than I do. However, I looked this up last night just to make sure I was accurate. So the 40% is the US number, right? 60% of second marriages and 73% of third marriages. Oh, the grass is not greener, according to these statistics, right?
Yeah.
So,
Exactly. Because you keep making the same mistakes, really. You just don't realize it, I think.
well, and I think to the previous question, we're looking at the other person. I think, Pam, you were saying, I'm looking at you to make me happy, right? And so if doing that repeatedly in our relationships, we're too codependent on that other person, and like we need to be either happy first, or we need to realize what we're bringing to the relationship.
Yeah. I'll tell on myself. I've been married twice. I think it's no secret, because I talk very openly about the things I did well and the things I did not do well. And it turns out that I did kind of marry the same person twice. They just look different, and they lived in different regions of the country. But when I think really carefully about it, I realized something, that what I was bringing to the table was someone who didn't feel she was good enough to advocate for herself, to stand up for herself, to articulate what she wanted. I was more the one who would acquiesce. And so naturally, I would attract partners who really enjoyed the submissive woman. And until I got into my right mind and said, no more. But you're absolutely right. So 2 marriages that didn't work, the same person showed up, me, until I really started understanding what I was doing and what I was bringing to the table that wasn't honoring myself. So does that mean my third marriage might not be the statistic?
Yeah,
Maybe third time's the charm.
because you are you are showing up as what we call your authentic self, right? You've done the work, and so that you're going to attract a person that is true to you, right? And when we don't do that work, when our ego is kind of driving, or we don't want to be vulnerable, and our insecurities are kind of taking the wheel, whether it's perfectionism or being submissive and not being in our assertive space and our secure space, we're very insecure, we're anxious, or we're avoidant. If we're not in that secure energy, we're going to keep, and opposites attract, right? So the more anxious I am, I'm gonna find an avoidant person. If I'm avoidant, I'm gonna find a person, until I reach my secure, authentic space where I can say, this is what I want, this is what I need, these are my boundaries, this is, until we're there, we're just going to keep repeating.
Yeah, good stuff. Wow.
Very true.
What do you think? What do you think that couples at a certain number of years married come to this place of the grass is greener on the other side, or do you think it differs based on the couple? Like, why do we come to this place?
I really think that if I really thought about it, I think that I think that's more of a personality trait, because some people want instant gratification. Some people don't like to do the work. Some people are constantly comparing themselves to others. And that's a big red in this question too, is like, do not compare your relationship to other people, because you have no idea what's going on in that relationship. And just because maybe, oh, look, Bob doesn't treat her that way. Well, that doesn't mean that if Bob was with you, he would treat you better. I don't know. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Like you coming in, it changes the whole system. It changes the whole dynamic. Right. So yeah, I don't think it's only about, I don't think it's like year 7, man. Although there is statistics about the 7-year itch and all of that stuff, I think it's more of a personality trait, or maybe something, a learned behavior, something we grew up hearing, like, oh, I should have married my high school sweetheart instead of your dad. Do you know what I mean? Like, if that's in the energy, family, home, it's kind of like this thing that kids are listening to, and then they grow up with that in their, as a frame of reference.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Lenore, when you're doing your mediation, do you ever say anything related to, this is the statistic? Do you ever point that out in the mediation process to help prepare people, just in case they think I'm getting rid of her so I can have someone else, not understanding that they might be just repeating the same old behavior?
Because the people that show up for mediation are very conscious about the choice that they're making, and they're pained by the choice. And they're not looking for a way out. They're looking for a peaceful transition. And generally when they come to mediation, especially if there's children involved, they intend to be involved in one another's life. And they acknowledge that maybe they're not good partners in marriage, but their goal is still to be good partners in parenting. I might have said things like that to somebody coming to me with their new girlfriend or boyfriend with a divorce. I think I've said to clients, that as we're going through a divorce and they're like, oh, I'm going out, I'm meeting this person, I often will say, take it slow, breathe. This is a process, and you really need to give yourself a couple years to get through this. It's like a divorce. You have to give yourself a chance to process this before you make any other big decisions. So that's what I would suggest, and the other thing is too, I think sometimes people marry the package instead of the person. And when they unwrap the package, they find this person that isn't who they thought they'd be.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
that I think that comes from doing a lot of personal work. I mean,
Hmm.
and it is like Natalie says, it's a lot of work. I mean, I'd say to my husband all the time, "You're lucky I love you because I don't do this yet." It's a lot of work.
Right, right, right.
Yeah.
And one other thing I'd like to point out, it seems like Natalie, once once someone decides, okay, the grass is greener on the other side, before they actually cross over, it seems like they should have, before the grass is greener on the other side, therapy with you, right? That one individual might want to come and talk through, I want to move on to something else. Okay, let's make sure you're ready. I would think, before I do it again, I think I want to come and talk to Natalie, or a Natalie, to make sure I'm ready and the blind spots that were once there aren't so there.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think
And
that's a good idea.
I find that I only work with couples. However,
Huh.
some couples that decide to separate, sometimes I take one of them on after, whether they go through mediation or whatever, because I know their story, because I know what they were like in their relationship, and they really do want to not continue these patterns. They knew that it wasn't right for that relationship, but they couldn't really, it was too far gone at that point, and I respect that. And so we work on not carrying it into the next one, so that they can truly be happy and attract the person that is right for them. It's just really challenging, and I'm very upfront with clients right from the beginning. If one of you has one foot out the door, what is our goal here? How can I help? And I don't say, so please leave because you have one foot out the door, but we have to be very mindful of what that looks like as far as commitment. I'm hoping for 100% commitment to the process, not to the marriage, to the process. And so if you have one foot out, how committed will you be to this process? It's concerning sometimes. And it kind of leaves the other.
I'm sorry, go ahead. I want you to finish that thought because something came up for me.
So let's say I'm in divorce counseling with my husband, or I'm in marriage counseling with my husband, and I'm sitting there saying, I have one foot out, but I'm going to try this. It's our last ditch effort, and I'm going to try. Well, he's probably sitting there thinking like, oh, okay, well, what does that mean? Should I be vulnerable with you? Should I trust you? Do I feel safe in this relationship? If you're comparing us to others, if you have one foot out, like, I don't trust, right? If there's not a sense of safety, which we can build and hopefully work on in the counseling. But that's what I mean as far as committing to the process. The process can look like all different ways, but
I see. So you're not aiming for the specific outcome of the marriage staying together. You're saying how you go through this matters more than the outcome, whether you stay or you go. Okay, gotcha.
absolutely. I'm team relationship and team marriage. I see myself as the counselor for the relationship. It's its own separate entity, and I am the spokesperson for it, right? And I take their individual needs into consideration, but I'm always in the back of my head. I'm almost like a co-parenting counselor, right? I do that. I keep the child as the center, right? I don't really care what mom or dad is bickering about going back and forth. It's not that I don't care, but the child has to be right. So the same thing when they come to me for counseling, for marriage counseling, I keep the marriage as the center. I always think, okay, what does the marriage need here? Not what does Natalie need, as a client. What does the marriage need? And that might look completely different than what an individual needs. And I say that very often to clients. They ask me, should I go to individual counseling while we're doing marital counseling? I'm like, well, your individual counselor might tell you to leave your husband, but I'm trying to keep your marriage together. So maybe we could, I'm not telling you to, but if that individual therapist isn't getting feedback from the other partner and they're only hearing it from you, sometimes it can it can go against some of the things that are happening in the marriage process.
Attorney Lenore, that sounds so much like what you do on the other side of the coin. Like your focus
Yes.
when they have children is on the children and preserving their lives and their sanity and their development as you help couples navigate the divorce process, doesn't it?
Yes, definitely. That's why I believe in so much what Natalie does. And even in the mediation process with the couples, um, trying to advocate for them to do this in a respectful way for the relationship, as opposed to what each wants to get out of this, the settlement. Like, let's look at how we can share this as a whole, not, I'm going to take the biggest half and leave.
Yeah, that's really good stuff. I really appreciate that perspective. I'm learning so much myself here. All right. How about we go to the next scenario? Are we ready for that one?
Definitely. Oh, yes.
Okay, here we go. The kids will thrive, right? Dear Attorney Lenore, I am reaching out to discuss proceeding with the divorce from my husband. We have two preteen daughters, and while I am concerned about the breakup with their father, I am more concerned if they will be okay. I've seen several friends go through divorces, and their children have adjusted well over time, but I'm worried that my children may not do well. Are there circumstances when kids don't do well from their parents' divorce, and the reason for that? Sincerely, looking out for the kids.
Wow. Every day deal with this.
Mm.
When they don't do well, it's when the parents aren't focused on them. It's when the parents are projecting their own needs and wants on them. The children will be okay if you make it okay for them. You will always be a family. You might not be living in the same house, but you'll always be a family. And if you give the children a sense of that, you're a family still, even if you're with mom or dad, but we want you to be happy in both of those houses. And we want you to still feel supported by both of your parents and not caught in the middle. They'll be okay. But if you want to shoot volleys over their heads while they're hiding in their emotional foxhole, you're going to end up with kids that are emotional Swiss cheese. So it's up to you too, how the kids do. And if you focus just on them, I think they'll be fine. And I'm sure, Natalie, you're the one that gets in the trenches with these people to get them to that point. So I would love to hear your perspective about this.
Well, you're 100% everything you said, and your metaphor about the foxhole and the Swiss. Yeah, I really do think it depends on the parents. I mean, not 100%, 1,000,000%. And what type of, are we keeping the children and their emotions and their well-being at the center of the central focus? What services do we have in place? Are we making sure we're talking to the school and the I don't know, the friends that they have, the parents of the friends? Like, do we have a community that's all rallying for these kids too, and making sure, do we have therapists line up if needed, whatever it might be? But at the end of the day, I'd like to be able to tell my parents that their kids aren't going to be touched by this, but they will be. I mean, they will. It's different for every child. It's different for every situation. But they will. And sometimes as humans, we tend to rationalize in one way or another, right? I stay because of my kids, or I leave, they'll be fine. Sally's kids were fine. My kids will be fine. Well, they're only going to be fine if we make this as, what I tell clients to make it as unremarkable as possible. Like, just try not to make it worse. Try not to make it, like remarkable, like some big, like you're saying, putting you in the middle of something, or having you get up in front of a judge and choose, or like, how remarkable do we have to make this, right? How, like, leaving marks on them, like you're saying, the Swiss cheese. The other thing that I think most is a very common misconception that I'd like to talk about is I hear many people say I'm going to wait until my child is 18. I have to say that is the worst age for a divorce. Worst. 18 years old is the worst age for your child to get divorced, right? It's not recommended. You know,
But why?
And why is that?
Yeah.
Mhm.
And this
I mean,
is right. So young children, although it is in their formative years, they are adaptable. Like you're saying. So we have 2 homes now. We're still a family. It's gonna be fine. Still, we'll make it work. 2 Christmases, whatever. Do you know what I mean? When a child is 18, they're starting to form relationships. They're starting to form loving, romantic, hopefully long-term relationships. They're going out on their own for the first time, and we want to send them off without baggage. Like, go live your life. And by the way, we're selling the family home, we're getting divorced, and maybe we'll have a place for you when you come back, but have fun. Go live your dream out there. It's like, wait, what? What's happening? Where do I go when I come back for spring break? Wait, but I thought you guys loved each other. Well, what does that mean for me? What does that mean about love? What does that mean about marriage? What does it mean? All at the age where they're supposed to be launching and discovering all these things, right? So now if you skip ahead to 22, 24, it's just better, right? If that's what you're holding on to, like they're going to be 18, they're going to be out of the house. Well, so my suggestion is before or after. It's not, I'm just saying that's my opinion, that's my recommendation, but you can see how that if we're thinking about having the kids in mind, 18 is a rough time to kind of like break that news and kind of break their world, really.
Right. Well, that makes sense. I mean, I always say that the parents, when they're divorcing, are imploding their children's universe. But when a child at that age is launching, it's a complete fault in their foundation. There's just this chasm, and they're like, yeah, what am I supposed to? What's my touchstone? So that makes perfect sense. I didn't even think of it that way until you said it, but that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
I'd like to go to the dark side and ask you, so sometimes, well, too often, there is a battle between mother and father about the kids, and it seems intentional that they don't care that the kid is thrown in the middle, and they're making the child choose, even if it's just passive aggressively, who the child wants to be with, or who's the better parent. And I want to know what's behind that. I mean, this is a reason, this to me would be a reason the kids won't be all right, because the parent or parents make that child sit smack dab in the middle of their issues. And one parent is whispering one thing in this child's ear, and the other is whispering something else, and it makes the kid go crazy. Why do we do that?
Can I be honest?
Oh, please do.
Yes. Your own shit. You know what I mean? You're immature. You are immature. You don't want to face it, but you are immature. You want to get the last word. You want to be right. This is probably why your relationship didn't go well either. But
right.
And if you can't, like, my hope in marriage counseling is that we find a way to yield for the greater good of the relationship, right? That's it. In co-parenting or mediation or post, the marriage is over, what are we going to do next? Is like, okay, now we're going to yield to what's the best for the kid or the family that is left over, whatever that looks like, right? So we don't like to yield. we don't. So it's figuring out why, right? And it's understanding. And I think once they get to Lenore, well, I think mediation is just, of course, in my opinion, a better way of ending a relationship so that it can be good for, especially when kids are involved. But yeah, by the time that they make it to that decision, you know, even when they try to co-parent in my office, it's like they try to get back into like, well, you did this and you, I'm like, I don't care who did what. It does not matter. That is individual therapy. That is your own lane. It is not talk about that anymore. We talk about what is happening that's impacting your children and what you need to do to fix that. If your goal is to be good at co-parenting, because right now you're not co-parenting. If you bring all that onto your kids. And that's a big thing. Everybody wants to co-parent, but when they really know what co-parenting is, not many people are doing it successfully.
Right. And one of the things I say to people a lot when they're in front of me trying to settle custody cases is, if you use the same relationship tools that failed you in your marriage, you will fail at co-parenting. You have to get a different set of relationship tools.
Right.
Ooh, that's a good one. Yeah. It goes back kind of to the work. Like we were the other scenario, that relationships take work, and so does co-parenting. It takes a lot of work, but it also takes a lot of, as you were pointing to, Natalie, inner work. You got to do your own inner work because you bring some shenanigans to the relationship because of your own past experiences and trauma and beliefs that have to be examined if you really want to do this well for the sake of the kids. And both need to do that. But if just one does it, I think it's better than neither doing it.
Oh, yeah, definitely. One of the things I always say is only one of you has to change your dance steps in order to change the dance. If one of you doesn't follow that toxic tango, you can't do it anymore. But I might have stepped on. So Natalie, what's practical about that people can do?
Far as, I'm sorry, maybe I missed the question.
As just in terms of, you know, dealing with their own stuff and changing their patterns.
What we know is, I mean, we're doing this constantly. I feel like I am anyway. Like I have 2 kids and like constantly like, okay, what can I change? What can I do? How can I do better? What can the work in my marriage, the work, my actual work, all this stuff, right? There's a hierarchy of needs, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? And at the top is actualization, because we don't get it at the first step. It's like the top, the pin, right? We don't start out with self-actualization. We have to trudge uphill to get there. And when we are self-actualized, when we are secure, when we feel like we're coming from a really a place of conviction, it's easier to make decisions from that space, right? For co-parenting, for relationships. And some people just need more work getting there than others. And as long as you're not avoidant of that process, it's possible for anyone. You know, no one's going to be perfect, but like you're saying, you change a few steps, a little goes a long way. And it's how well we can let go and cope, and sometimes we just don't have great coping skills for this.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Very
Lots
nice.
of stuff.
Okay. All right. Are we ready
for our next big topic? Wow.
Out to the next scenario. Yes, here we go. All righty. Marriage counseling, success or failure. Dear Attorney Lenore, my partner and I have been married for 13 years and we're thinking about getting a divorce. We're not sure, so we're thinking about marriage counseling. One of my friends had a good counselor and it helped a lot, but another friend tried it and it didn't work for them. What should we do if it doesn't work for us? Sincerely, afraid of failure.
Well, I mean, a journey of 1,000 miles starts with the first step. You don't know unless you try. And this sort of dovetails into so much of what we were talking about, doing personal work and also finding the right counselor for you. I mean, you know, everybody's different. And when people ask me sometimes about counselors, I say, well, you know, I know several that are successful, but really that person has to click with you. You have to resonate with the counselor for it to be successful. So maybe this other friend, it didn't work because that counselor didn't resonate for them, or maybe because their marriage wasn't going to be saved by counseling. You just never know, as Natalie was saying. So what would you say, Natalie, when someone is coming to you for marriage counseling with these fears and doubts and questions?
Yeah. So, I mean, my first thought, to your point exactly, is good fit. Research has now shown that it's not just your commitment to therapy, but also the fit of the therapist, right? So not only am I committed to this process, but I believe in you as my therapist. I trust you. I trust your advice. I trust your recommendations. Without that, I could be telling you things and you're like, yeah, okay, lady. And then you don't do them because you don't trust me, right? It's not a good fit. I think that there are certain things to consider when choosing someone. I think having a consult, making sure you and your partner are present for it, asking things like if you were trained in certain, like Gottman, emotionally focused therapy, imago therapy. These are very relationship specific therapies. And if not saying that there might not be a good counselor who isn't certified or trained in these things, but that shows you that they're committed to, and they've put a lot of time and effort into focusing their efforts into couples, right, and marriages and relationships. So yeah, I agree with everything you're saying in regards to good fit. I think it's totally important. And commitment and motivation, because at the end of the day, I can't work harder than you on your relationship, right? And I tell clients, I can't go home with you. I can't go on vacation with you. Like, you gotta use the things. And that's why the commitment and motivation part is so huge as far as the success. I have clients, mostly males, ask me pretty frequently, what is your success rate? I'm like, well, it could be divorce. So I don't know what you mean by success rate, but if you're committed and motivated to the process, it should feel successful in some way, even if it's a separation or divorce or staying together, whatever the goal is.
Well, what do you say, Natalie, to a couple where one might feel Natalie is just so on my husband's side? She really keeps favoring him and she's picking on me. Like, how do you have those kinds of experiences?
I have tried so hard not to. That is a huge, I would say that's one of my main focuses in my office, which is a non-judgmental space where we can say what we need to say. It's like a tree of trust or something, where I don't have skin in this game. There's no reason for me to be biased. And so I build the rapport so that they know and understand that someday I am going to pick on you. And then I'm going to pick on her too. And then I'm going to pick on you again. And then I'm going to pick on her. I actually had a client today that said, I'm never validated in this room. And I said, really? Would you like me to tell you all the ways I've been validating you? Do you know what I mean? Like, it's like, I have the trust in myself, which maybe I have not gotten the feedback that I shouldn't have this trust, but I have the trust in myself that I'm being open-minded and I'm trying to hear both of you. And I just see myself as like a filter, right? She starts talking, I listen, I validate her experience. I go, okay, can you hear her? Can you validate that experience? Do you understand? Okay, he's talking. Okay, can you validate that experience? So in my opinion, it's slowing down time, because we don't get to do that in the real world. Things are happening so quickly. No mediator is saying, okay, slow down. Okay, now listen to her. What is she really saying? Nobody's room. Just like pausing and stopping time for a little bit. I don't really care about the context. I want to know what's happening for you. What are you experiencing in your body? How can this person validate you? How can you be understood and really be heard, so that you can make a really like a conscious choice from that point forward? What you do with that is up to you.
Yeah. So, does it matter the licensure of the therapist? Because if the therapist is a therapist in biofeedback, is that the therapist we should go to for marriage counseling?
Well, so that would be a certification. So licensure versus being certified or trained in something is different. So
Okay.
course, I'm a licensed professional counselor. There are licensed social workers. There are LMFTs, which are licensed marriage and family therapists. I'm sure I'm missing something in there too. Or a psychologist. Some psychiatrists do talk therapy. We're all counselors. We're trained to see really any type of couple or individual. But when you start niching, right, and having specialties and getting trainings and certifications, right, I wouldn't expect you to go to a someone who's trained in, CBT for anxiety and depression, and that's your marriage counselor, right? Because they may be effective. I'm not, but typically we want to know that they have all the right, all the right tools. Right. But again, I don't really think that means that they couldn't, because many therapists can. It's not about I don't know if it's always about the ability. To your point, I think or to Lenore's point, I think it's more about fit and knowing at any time, like if it's not working, your therapist should be open to hearing direct feedback and not, or being able to hear what you have to say and say, maybe it's not a good fit. Let me find you someone else, or let me help you in that process. Like I'm not here for my ego. I'm here to help them. Right. So yeah. And I think one thing I want to touch on too, with this question about counseling before divorce, we touched upon discernment counseling, and maybe give your listeners just a little feedback on what discernment counseling really is, because many people haven't heard about it.
Well, please, like, I have a very general idea, but I know that you understand it and do discernment counseling. So please explain that, because I think it's a wonderful tool.
Yeah, so it's a little bit different of a process where when I see clients for couples counseling, we typically always meet the three of us, because I think it's very important, even if I'm only talking to one of my clients in the session, that the other person's there to witness it. That they're there to hear, they're there to listen, they're there to see how I would talk to their partner in a time like this. So I think it's very important. I think we can heal through being together in the process. With discernment counseling, we meet as a couple initially, but then we kind of break off into individual counseling for a session or two to really understand what's going on for the individual and why they're discerning whether or not they should be continuing in the relationship. Right. And that helps me recommend or give feedback when we meet back together and say, yeah, after hearing this, my recommendation is that you're a good candidate for mediation, or that we should maybe go to a co-parenting person, or we should do individual therapy before we make any decisions. Or I think that we could try the marriage counseling process, and I would need your commitment. And what I do is I usually give them a time frame. We're going to do this for 3 months, 6 months, and we're going to put all of our eggs in this basket, and we're going to see if it works out. Right. And so it's much different than when someone comes to see us for marriage counseling, because in marriage counseling, their goal is to be in the relationship, most likely. Discernment counseling, they're being very upfront about how they feel in the relationship and whether or not they're going to be able to stay in it. And so we take the time to kind of break down those feelings with a professional to understand maybe it is time to move on, or maybe there's a chance to stay. And so it's just a different process.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
All right, I think we have one more scenario, and let me bring that up. He won't see a therapist. Oh, this is going to be good. Dear Attorney Lenore, I'm really sad and need your help. My husband has been cheating on me and now wants a divorce after 23 years of being married. I asked him to go to counseling with me first, but he won't. He says I'm the one who needs counseling, not him. What can I do to make him try counseling before he goes ahead with the divorce? I think counseling will help him stop cheating. Sincerely, holding on to hope.
Oh, honey. Oh, honey. You deserve so much better than him. That's what I would want to say to her. he don't want to change.
Mm.
And counseling isn't going to help him stop cheating if he doesn't want to. I just, and in terms of, is she the one who needs counseling? Not because she's the problem in the relationship, but because she doesn't see she deserves so much better than this guy.
Mm.
It sounds like she's almost become codependent on this person, and
Mm.
um he probably is a narcissist, and she's probably the perfect foil for a narcissist. I you know I would not recommend to this person staying married, because he's just going to keep doing what he's doing, and she's just going to get older, and he's just going to keep sucking the best years of her life out of her. I'm sorry to say it that way. Now, whether or not they'd be good candidates for mediation, I don't know. Somebody who cheats may not be very upfront and not want to be working to have a peaceful resolution here, but I'm sure, Natalie, bells and whistles are going off with you on this one. What would you say?
I mean, to your point, I think that this is what the kids are calling gaslighting these days, right? Which is,
Hmm.
telling her that it's her fault, her problem. In a situation like this, it's very no, is the answer to that. But to your point, that doesn't mean that she doesn't need counseling as an individual to understand her own self-worth. And I think it goes back to everything we've been saying. If he isn't committed and motivated to going to therapy, he's, after doing something like that specifically, he's not committed and motivated for your relationship, right? Because the idea is that after we have, look, affairs and infidelity and betrayal such as this can be, I mean, people break, I meet people after this, and all I see is a woman or a man I have to put back together before they leave the office. And there has to be space for that. And if the person who betrayed their partner doesn't have the space, there's no heal. This person has to heal. I mean, they need, and so atoning for what they've done is a big part of is post infidelity counseling. It is the biggest part. I mean, it has to happen first before anything else happens. So if your husband isn't willing to atone for what he's done, you cannot heal. All you're being asked to do is forgive and forget and move on and do that work on your own, honey. Whether or not he's going to continue to be unfaithful, whatever, but how does she heal? How does she trust again? How does she feel safe ever again if he's the one that hurt her, right? And so it's a very loaded question, but I agree. I think that I'm a strong believer that you shouldn't have to convince someone to love you. And
Yes, wow, that's powerful.
Yes, that is very powerful. You should not have to convince anyone to love you. I think it's very interesting that he does blame her, that you're the one that needs the help, not me. You're the one that needs the counseling, not me. He's so unaware, so detached from what he has caused and who he is.
It sounds classic narcissist, like that one of our other shows, but I'm sorry, Natalie, I interrupted.
Sometimes what I see is that's a defense mechanism, right? And then we can get that person in here and we break down those walls a little bit. And sometimes post-affair recovery can be an opportunity for a relationship to really get better. I'm not saying that, there's no one made you cheat. No one made you do that. But at the same time, I'm open to hearing, and I hope this person is too, after you atone, what challenges were in the relationship that made you more vulnerable to cheating, not that caused you to cheat, that made you more vulnerable to it, right? And there usually are some scenarios where, you know, the relationship or that person became more vulnerable to it because of the situation in their marriage, and that's possible. But if it's just, no, you get your help and I'm fine over here, and that's the way it's going to be, I don't know what type of relationship, that healthy relationship, that's too dysfunctional.
Well, that was a great point. This has been a wonderful discussion on this topic. Natalie, how can people reach you?
Well, I have two practices, Mainline Marriage Counseling, so mainlinemarriagecounseling.com, and we have 3 therapists who see couples, and I also have another practice, which is Mainline Counseling Specialist, and we have 4 counselors who see clients individually from teens all the way till adulthood. So, but yeah, you can visit my website, Facebook, you can DM us, you can email us, you can reach out. Anyway, thank you.
Oh,
Awesome.
you're welcome. You're a wonderful resource.
Thank you.
That's wonderful. And I would like to offer to our viewers that if you would like to have a 60-minute consultation with me about what you're facing in your divorce, or if you're interested in mediation, I give you a discount from my usual $350 consultation fee for 60 minutes to $100. And you can reach out to me at divorcedonedifferentlypa@gmail.com. And I'd be happy to try and help you navigate these troubled waters in whatever way I can.
Sounds great. Thank you so much. And
Thank
we're
you,
going to
Natalie. Thank you, Pam.
Bye-bye.
Wonderful. Thank you. Bye.